Chad, at the top of this draft, quarterbacks. Caleb Williams going number 1. He's going to Chicago. And I try to, at this time of year, not get caught up in the cyclical nature of these stories, because we had the story over the weekend about Jayden Daniels, and he wasn't happy. His agent certainly wasn't happy with the fact that the Washington Commanders brought all 4 quarterbacks in on the same day and staggered those visits. And they thought they were going to have a one-on-one with the Commanders, with Adam Peters, their new general manager, Dan Quinn, the new head coach, Cliff Kingsbury, the new offensive coordinator. And while they had talks with them, they also had talks with all 4 that they were considering. And you also have the Drake May decision on, this time last year, everyone's talking about next year's quarterback crop, and it was Caleb Williams and Drake May. And now it's Caleb Williams, and then a decision to be made. And the Commanders have made a lot of decisions recently. They've changed ownership. They have a new head coach in Dan Quinn. They have a new general manager in Adam Peters. But the real turnaround will be the new quarterback that they decide to go with. That starts Thursday. The big decision for the Commanders organization moving forward starts Thursday with the number 2 overall selection. And I still think that despite who I would go with Jayden Daniels. I still believe they're going to go with Drake May. I think it's a very tough decision. But I think Drake May will talk his way into that pick. Because behind closed doors, and Chadwell, you may be the director of first impressions with the door here. When Drake May walks through the door, he's the director of first impressions. He's the alpha because of the way he comes across versus the perception of which he plays. And I think you've got to go with the version of the guy on the field. I love what Jayden Daniels did. The perception changed for me when he left Arizona State and went to LSU. I was stunned based on the results I saw at Arizona State. And those factor in. But the improvement, the coaching, and the player transformed into a Heisman Trophy winner. Drake May, meanwhile, had an 8-1 team. And we saw the last 2 years at North Carolina, if they didn't fall off a cliff, well, they fell into the rest of the group that went to a different bowl game other than winning your conference. Here's what I'm talking about. This is from Albert Breer back right after the Combine. And keep in mind, May has this laid-back, calm, cool, collected approach on the field. I don't mind that one bit. But the perception is he's probably a little introverted behind the scenes, and it's the exact opposite. This is Albert Breer. You know how strong this year's class is at the position. The Caleb Williams might be the most talented prospect, but you've got Jayden Daniels, who's the Heisman winner. He's seen his stock rise like a rocket ship over the past 6 months. There's depth, too, at the position. But no one helped himself more than May, who left an impression with scouts that echoed in the bars and restaurants of Indianapolis. That impression was, the antithesis of what they'd expected. The quarterback teams thought they'd get with that voice and laid-back gait. Instead, they got the juice, coming across as competitive and fiery. After someone told me May is more Phillip Rivers than Eli Manning or Daniel Jones, a mutual friend of both Rivers and Jones gave me this direct response. He is Phillip, said this person. And then later, Jim Denton, agent to both guys, just smiled at the comparison and said, in prompting it, showing exactly who he is, May accomplished what he wanted to accomplish at the Combine. I'm adding at the Combine. Here is the quote from the agent, from Drake May. That was my goal. I wanted to let people hear me. Even in the interviews, they mentioned, hey, you seem like you're in the zone before the game. You don't really say much. Getting to see that side of me in the locker room, me in meetings, me at practice, it was really what I wanted to accomplish. So hearing that really makes me feel good. And then Breer added, it made teams feel really good too. I also like this about May. I'm not saying going to the Combine and accomplishing that is a bad thing. Because if I had one perception of a guy, I want to see the actual player and meet the man that I'm going to make the face of the franchise. But that goes back to why I think Washington he will talk his way into being the pick. And if the Jayden Daniels reports are true that he was unhappy with Washington bringing all 4 guys in, guess who's going to make the final impression the most? memorable. Drake May. About Carolina's team falling off the last 2 years. This is the 8-1 year, Chad. The lessons May took from leading his team through that, as the quarterback would go with him. This is last year, where you've got the issues with the wide receiver not being eligible to play. They've got a lot of distraction. And with little regrets, the last year will help him chart his future. Here's Drake May quoting on leading the team last year. That time when you face adversity, and you face adversity numerous different times throughout the year, you just learn from it. Learn from your mistakes, learn from the different situations. It really was different situations as a leader for me on that team. Coming from my first year, just trying to earn people's respect as a player, being a leader for those guys. I do think back on times where I got the offense together and I tried to get them ready to go. But looking back on it, I wish I would have gotten the whole team. I feel like the impact I had as a guy in that locker room for the entire team would have paid off for us, and it would have paid off for me, paid more dividends than me getting the offense together for meetings. So in those things, I regret. And those are things I'm trying to, in my next step, in my next chapter in life, make sure I get right. That's Drake May. Those are what things you want to hear as a leader of your franchise, right? But Jayden Daniels on the field, Chad, I can't help but think about the short passing game and the accuracy, and Drake May missing some layups. And meanwhile, Jayden Daniels hits the home run. And I think Washington, while May can go on and be a superstar by all means, the quarterback that they select is not going into a situation like Bryce Young went into in Carolina because of the weapons on offense in Washington. He's got two legit wide receivers ready to go. The rookie quarterback can have, if not a C.J. Stroud-type performance, you can win and surprise in the division that's always competitive. It's a big moment for them.
It is. This is, to me, an interesting discussion on quarterback wins as a valuation of who they are as a leader and who they are and what they're responsible for on their football team, right, when we're looking at these different guys. Hutton, you bring up a great example with Drake May. We love everything about the guy, certainly all the intangibles. I love that he grew up in a family full of athletes, and he played every sport, and he was a leader in all those sports, and he's very multifaceted when it comes to that. And he's got a nice lineage of family members, including his dad, who was a great quarterback
and it was his
at
AA
North
coach.
Carolina. Yeah, and so he's got the pedigree, right? There's everything to like about that. The one thing I don't like about him is team-related, and that is they cratered at the end of the last two seasons with him at quarterback. Now, that's also North Carolina and their talent, which has improved under Mac Brown, versus, let's say, LSU and Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels didn't really win anything of great significance. He did beat Alabama at one point at home. They won some nice games, but it's not like they were, SEC champions, national champions type good, but he won a Heisman Trophy and lit up the scoreboard too. So there's a ton of value in that. So how much do you put on that? I'm going to talk in a little bit about J.J. McCarthy, the guy who won it all, who did nothing but win while at Michigan. And now suddenly he's the belle of the ball, and he's the one that everyone wants to trade up to try to draft as the fourth quarterback taken. But with Drake May versus Jayden Daniels at number 2 with the Commanders, I am still so fascinated by this little tidbit that Adam Schefter dropped on the Pat McAfee show, where he said Jayden Daniels does not want to be with the Commanders. And I think that he's let that known through certain people. And that if that's the case, we'll see how the Commanders handle that. And Hutton, then I think about new ownership, Josh Harris, and the success he's had at other places. And I do think that while, look, this is business, you want to draft the guy you think is best for your organization. And if they say, well, I'm not sure about it, I think the word was he's not sure about Washington as much as some other spots he might want to end up. Well,
he's considering, he's wondering about his options.
Wondering about his options and, whether or not he's all in with Washington.
Going back to the visit last week.
Right. So it's a business. They could draft him and say, well, we'll convince him. We know that we've got a good structure in place and leadership, and it's a new day. This is not Dan Snyder's Washington franchise. This is not the WFT, the Washington football team.
Right.
these are our Washington Commanders, and we're going to run this thing professionally like a business, Jayden's going to love it. Or he could be the type of guy that says, if he's telling that through back channels or saying that he's unsure about whether or not he wants to be here, and we're close on Drake May.
His agent is for sure.
Yeah.
His agent is liking tweets about certain things against Washington.
So the fact that that's out there, now again, they could just say, screw it, we think he's a better talent, and we'll show him that we're the right place for him, and we'll draft him anyways. I just feel like Josh Harris, as they start to rebuild this Washington image, not just the roster, not just the quarterback and leadership, but the image of the Washington pro football franchise within the NFL. They're trying to rebuild that in the DMV. They're trying to rebuild that in the NFL head office. They're trying to get every other owner to respect them, appreciate them, understand it is a new day for that organization. I don't know that I want to go into that new day on day one with a guy whose agent is liking tweets about the Commanders not being a great spot.
Well, the agent could have ulterior motives here.
True. But again, I'm just, this is a 10,000-foot view I'm giving you here. If you've got one guy, if you're close on two quarterbacks, I'm going to dumb this down for everyone. If you're close on two quarterbacks, you're down to Jayden Daniels or Drake May, and you're saying to yourself, I'm going to go with one of these two guys, and it's close, I may not want the guy that has any doubts about where we're headed as an organization. And I don't know what Drake May's agent or his representation or what he said specifically to the Commanders either. Maybe some similarities between him and Daniels, that organization. But if he's given me no apprehensions about playing there and wanting to be there, I might side with that guy.
Well, and I think a couple of things come to mind from the agent. Here's what Schefter said. Schefter on Jayden Daniels' visit with Washington, he said this on Get Up. It didn't seem to go over too well with his agent, who sounded off on social media that he didn't seem particularly pleased with the process. Daniels thought it would be a visit just for him, but Washington essentially opened it up with the process, meaning they staggered when the quarterbacks would arrive, but they had all four arrive on the same day. I also, the reason why the agent would have different view on this, he wants to prepare his client. And if you're going in one-on-one, you can certainly get your message across a certain way. You can kind of control things. Meanwhile, if you have other quarterbacks in the room together, well, maybe you're reacting rather than controlling. And I think May is more of the guy who can speak up and lead that room more so than not. I don't know the perception of Jayden Daniels behind the scenes. I haven't heard anything bad about it coming out of the combine. But just read from Albert Breer when he wrote back in February, the guy that everyone was talking about at the bars where everyone hangs in Indy after the workouts and the interviews, they're all talking about Drake May on the same day that they're likely talking and interviewing and trying to figure out certain things about certain players at the same position group. I think that's important to note. Also important to note, we are in an era where it does seem that more and more players want to dictate where they're going. But I don't have any negative thought on the process of what Washington did here. I actually like it. You want to see who's going to step up and that, to me, that fits a kind of a Dan Quinn type move. Defensive guy, right?
Yeah.
Cliff Kingsbury, who you bring in. To me, I'm thinking more Jayden Daniels than Drake May. But Drake May is certainly a solid athlete with everything he's done throughout his career in other sports. I don't know. It's just it's an intriguing decision by them to see. And Chad, think about this too. This came out after the visit, right? I would think if you're complaining about it, if your agent is liking this, maybe it's because it didn't go over so well. Maybe it's because, well, you heard that May made the better impression. Maybe J.J. McCarthy did. Who knows? Leadership matters, and I think May behind the scenes can come across as that guy. Daniels can too, but the stories are coming about Drake May. What are you hearing, Jad?
Well, quickly, Davey sends us a message and asks, what if the Commanders draft neither? Well, I don't see that as a strong possibility. But
here's the thing. The possibility could be...
They're not trading out of it. They've said that.
They're taking the quarterback. They're taking a quarterback.
Yeah. What if they drafted McCarthy?
McCarthy. Yeah, we throw McCarthy in there too. But if you are Jayden Daniels and you don't want to play for the Commanders, and nothing has been publicly said about that, but that direct statement, you've got New England who may want to trade out of 3. Or maybe you want to play in New England. One of those two things. Maybe you want to play with Gerard Mayo. Just you've got a situation where you can try to dictate how you're going to play and where you're going to play. Haven't seen that publicly, but it's a fascinating move, not just for Washington, but it does impact New England too, because New England may trade out. The assumption is they're not going to. Maybe they do trade back, and they have a Minnesota trade up, where Josh McCown has a connection to Drake May, for instance, through coaching. May went to their quarterback's coach is Josh McCown. McCown's son Owen is now a quarterback at UT San Antonio, and his son backed up Drake May in high school. So there's a connection with Minnesota. Just keep that in mind. If Drake May were to make it past Washington, they could move up to maybe New England spot at 3 or Arizona at 4. I'm not saying McCown drafts for the Vikings. There's just a solid connection there.
It's I think it's one of those two guys to the Commanders, Daniels or May.
Yeah.
But crazier things have happened.
I would go with Daniels.
We're gonna come up with our sort of what we think is going to happen in that top 10 coming soon in advance of our draft party this Thursday night here at 6 and Peabody. So come hang out.
The draft watch party with OutKick, myself, Chad, and Clay Travis. He'll be here with us this Thursday. Join us at 8 p.m. Eastern. OutKick.com is where you can stream the show live. You can also join us across the streaming platforms that you see on the screen there, YouTube, X, and Facebook. It's going to be fun. We're going to kick back. We will drink booze while Roger Goodell is booed on Thursday.
Yeah. We'll drink every time a boo happens. Yeah, that'll be our own drinking game.
We will have draft beer while we react to the draft.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
On Thursday. There are certain qualities that stick out on all these guys. For instance, I think J.J. McCarthy is a better leader than Caleb Williams. That showed last year. There are things that you can point to with J.J. McCarthy and say, love this about the guy. I can't point to him and say, top 5 pick. And that's what we're hearing.
Yeah, so you know how On3 Sports has like that industry-generated average of a recruit? And they'll give you where they're ranked on average of all the different recruiting, the composite. Yeah, thank you. That's the word I was looking for, the composite ranking. So CBS Sports has done a composite mock draft of all the mock drafts and all the prognostications, and they're coming up with the most likely scenario of where guys are going to be picked. For J.J. McCarthy, they have that spot at number 5 in the draft. Okay, number 5 overall pick. Now, think throughout history, some of those guys that would be top 10 picks in the NFL draft. Now, I've seen comps for J.J. McCarthy that include his college coach, Jim Harbaugh, as a possible comparison for his NFL career, who had a nice career with the Bears and then later with the Colts. I've seen a comparison to him and Alex Smith, who was the number 1 overall pick with San Francisco, who also had a nice career over the long haul. Hell, I've seen one comparison that says he's as athletic as Joe Burrow and could on the high end be number 1 pick, a guy who got the Cincinnati Bengals to the Super Bowl in Joe Burrow. I'm going to go ahead and get out ahead of this, and I'm either going to look brilliant or like an absolute moron in about 2 or 3 years based on the results of this draft and how this guy looks. I think J.J. McCarthy is more A.J. McCarron than he is Joey Burrow in his NFL career. I think this guy is a backup somewhere. I don't know that he's going to be a long-term starter. But yet we're seeing him now as a top 5 pick when just this season most people had him, 2nd, 3rd round? A.J. McCarron was drafted 164th overall in the 5th round and had a nice career as a long-time backup quarterback in the NFL. A.J. McCarron was a guy who was, and I'm looking at one draft analysis of him, coming out of the draft in 2013. He is praised for his game management and decision-making. That sound like anyone else you've heard of? praise for his game management and decision making. Only thing that's left out here is great locker room guy. Great locker. Jim Rat also. Jim Rat. This A.J. McCarron and J.J. McCarthy. I think J.J. McCarthy is a terrific leader. I do think that he affected winning in probably more ways than we're willing to give him credit. And Jim Harbaugh has said as much. And when his number was called, he usually delivered. He was also on a national championship winning team that was driven heavily by a great offensive line and a stellar run game and an amazing defense. So I'm not going to crown J.J. McCarthy the next Joe Burrow or even Alex Smith right now, because I think he is a byproduct of a great system and a great roster and a great one season where the Michigan Wolverines won the national title. Is he Mac Brown? Or sorry, not Mac Brown, Mac Jones, who is also a national championship winning quarterback? Mac Jones is setting records offensively at Alabama. Hadn't worked out for him so far in the NFL. Now, that may be because they can't find an offensive coordinator for him in New England. But regardless, I don't think J.J. McCarthy is it. I think the early projections of him, late first round, maybe second round, are way more accurate to his ability than what we're seeing now as a top 5 pick.
Yeah, no, it's certainly debatable whether or not we would see this hype if Michigan if they could not go to the college football playoff and we didn't see them make the run that they did. Would we see the hype around J.J. McCarthy right now?
No.
Well, certainly not from the media standpoint. A lot of this, I feel like, is media-driven. But on the flip side of it, it's not like the insiders are just making up names. You know, if you want a story to push, you could push the Bo Nix turnaround.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Hutton, it's as simple as this. It is.
Bo Nix was a first-round pick in mock drafts at the end of at the end of the college football season, and now he's not.
I think we go too far in this direction, and I think NFL teams are guilty of this. He is a pro-style quarterback who played for a former pro quarterback who is known as a quarterback developer, who coached Andrew Luck in a system at Stanford that didn't always produce huge numbers for Andrew Luck. But Andrew Luck was one of the best prospects to ever enter the NFL draft.
He was the second coming.
Yes. And that's who he coached. That's what he is. So I think NFL scouts see that and say, boy, he knows a lot of the terminology. He knows how to go through a progression. We like that about him. And maybe you discredit some guys who didn't play in what we would see as a pro-style offense, right? Whoever that may be. Maybe it is a Bo Nix or whoever. Whoever you want to look at and say, well, they're not as pro-ready as we like. I think J.J. McCarthy gets the benefit of the doubt on that because of where he played, who he played for, and the system he was in.
Well, see,
and the amount of games he won and winning a national title.
This is how I'm judging the J.J. McCarthy debate. If you love the guy, you draft him in the first round, fine. You know, like we've seen quarterbacks get drafted in the first round that no one thought would be there or no one thought would be drafted where they were, and they turn out to be storylines of, can you believe 5 years later, can you believe this team passed on Patrick Mahomes? Can you believe that no one wanted to draft now two-time NFL MVP Lamar Jackson until Baltimore traded up into the first round and got him at 32? But I'm not trading up into the top 5 and paying the price. We've got the New York Giants who are in the mix for trading up to 4 and drafting him from the Arizona Cardinals selection. We know Minnesota is connected to him and Drake May. You have the Raiders. You have Raiders and Jayden Daniels make a lot of sense too, by the way. Raiders with quarterback needs. There are others. Broncos, who today made a trade, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. Zach Wilson, now a Bronco.
So you're still in quarterback needs in Denver.
You would think.
Point being, there are quarterback needy teams that would be needing to trade up in order to draft him.
Yeah.
And are you going to pay a price tag that includes future first-round picks this year, and then you're flip-flopping your pick this year too? Minnesota has 2 first-round picks that they can play around with. Not everybody has that luxury. But specifically Denver. You know, Denver's being mocked where they're connected to him, Chad. Denver traded away a total combined 3 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks in order to acquire Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. One's not there. And they actually have a first-round pick this year. And in some of the mocks and some of the forecasting, media members and others have the Denver Broncos trading away more future first-round picks for J.J. McCarthy so they can get up high enough to get him. I just don't see that type of player. If you love him and he falls to you, draft him. But I'm not giving up what is the future of the franchise total if I'm a bad football team and thinking, well, this is plug and play, we're one player away. It's always the quarterback draft and then the rest of the draft. But I'm not trading away the rest of the draft to go get this guy.
No. And also, this is just me personally. I believe Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix could be as successful as J.J. McCarthy with Justin Jefferson in Minnesota. Like, if you gave me the pick of those three, I'm probably going in order Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, and then J.J. McCarthy as to who I want to throw passes to Justin Jefferson in Minnesota. You're going to get those guys. You got those guys sitting where you are, not giving up the farm, not giving up all those picks and everything you got to give up.
What we don't know is the behind-the-scenes discussions. Does he have a photographic memory where he's just rattling off different offensive calls?
Yeah, we don't know how they do in the interviews.
The Gruden quarterback camp stuff.
Right.
We
don't know everything they know on that. I'm telling you, watching the guys play in college, my opinion is that J.J. McCarthy is A.J. McCarron and Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix would be better for the Vikings and Justin Jefferson than J.J. McCarthy, and you don't have to give up anything to draft either one of those quarterbacks in the first round if you so desire. That's what I believe about this guy right now. J.J. McCarthy may make me look like an idiot wherever he goes, and he may be Joe Burrow. I don't see it.
Yeah,
I don't see it in what I've seen at Michigan. I don't understand the love for him. I don't know how CBS's composite draft has him at number 5 overall. But Hutton, that's where all reports are heading for him, is that he's going to be a top 5 pick, and it blows my mind.
Here's Mike Tannenbaum, former NFL executive, who is trying to explain, I don't know if he'll do this well, trying to explain why teams love J.J. McCarthy so much. For me, sorry, this is a typo. I've been talking about him for months. So this whole idea that he's rising, that has not been the case for me. I think he's been there. When you look at a quarterback, he's 6'2", 219. He started 28 games. He won 27 of them, 49 career touchdowns, almost 1,000 yards rushing. And he has pushed back the idea that J.J. McCarthy was not asked to do enough at Michigan. Another quote. If you go back a couple of years, they're playing Illinois at home. Really cold. Illinois had a good defense that year. He made the plays in the fourth quarter between a run. There was a pass interference to go get a makeable field goal. Alabama brought them back one time after another. In those high leverage moments, he played well. And then if you run the searches in true media where he's going down in distance, 3rd and 7 or longer this year, he's been the best QBR of any quarterback. He's probably not facing or throwing the football all that much because they were really good. They were blowing teams out. Just saying the opportunities there.
I mean, they could run on 3rd and 7 and pick it up a lot of times.
I'm really hard-pressed to understand what he doesn't have. He's a great person. He's a great leader. I think he's a way better quarterback right now, hear this name, than Daniel Jones. And that's where the Giants are connected to McCarthy. This was, how long ago was these quotes? This was late last month when he was making these quotes about J.J. McCarthy. And now the Giants are linked to them. Chad, I'm with you. I think, no doubt he's a great leader. I think he's a better leader than Caleb Williams. We could see that. Just he was navigating 6 games this past year where they go unbeaten without the head coach on the sideline. Tons of distraction. You lose one game, it's not your fault, JJ, because of everything that's going on. You find out that your coach is suspended as you're flying to face on the road Penn State. What do? You go win the game, and you don't cry post-game like Sharon Moore did on national TV. You go win the game, and you step up, and you go beat Maryland as you're looking ahead to Ohio State. You win that game, too. And then, oh, by the way, you go into the college football playoff as well. I mean, connected to the whole Connor Stallions thing or not, I've said no. There's nothing to point to the players. But regardless of that, he stepped up, and I would be willing to bet the team looks at him more than they looked at Blake Corum in those moments.
Look, I feel way better about J.J. McCarthy, everything off the field, than, let's say, Caleb Williams, who is the consensus number 1 overall pick and a better talent. And I believe way more talented than J.J. McCarthy. But J.J. McCarthy, in my mind, has not advanced past great option late in the first round for a really good team that's got an aging quarterback to be a backup for a year or two, and then take over and be a great leader for a great organization that's already good. I don't see where he's advanced from that to franchise savior of a top 5 pick for a team that's drafting in the top 5.
Oh, let me also say franchise saver, job saver for Brian Daboll and Joe Shane. If the reports that they're looking to move up to go get McCarthy, why would you not want to move up in this scenario if you're moving up to 4 and go get Marvin Harrison Jr.? Have you seen their depth chart at wide receiver? Go get your pick of the wide receivers right now. They have Jalen Hyatt, Darius Slayton, and Wan'Dale Robinson. Those are their starting wide receivers currently for Daniel Jones without Saquon Barkley.
The answer is they just must really hate Daniel Jones if that were to be the move for
Drew
them to
Lock's
go
their
up and
backup.
get J.J. McCarthy.
Oh, and then Danny DeVito's still there, Chad.
Oh, Danny DeVito or Tommy DeVito? Danny would be
Tommy,
great.
sorry.
Yeah,
I saw DeVito.
Danny, his role in Twins.
Danny DeVito,
with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
better agent than Tommy DeVito.
Danny DeVito would have a hard time seeing over his line. Danny
They
DeVito
do.
is 4'10", so that'd be a difficult. I mean, everything would be like a lob pass because he's throwing way up high to get over his offensive line.
But screw that. We don't need talent here.
No.
We do top end talent. Trade up. We're going to go bring J.J. McCarthy and give him Jalen Hyatt, Darius Slayton, and Wan'Dale Robinson.
Now, if we're just talking about on Earth, Danny DeVito way more talented than Tommy DeVito. Anyone can watch
better
Frank Reynolds
representation.
on It's Always Sunny and know that he's way more talented than Tommy DeVito.
What do you think Danny DeVito would charge the pizza spot?
Do you think that Danny DeVito's agent also wears a fedora like Sean Stellato? Sean Stellato?
I think it's Stellato.
Sean Stellato? I could see his agent being very, very Italian, much like Sean Stellato also.
I mean,
Danny DeVito feels like a guy.
Do you think he's wearing he's going into the Italian, the American Hall of Fame for Italians or whatever he entered like that same week?
Yeah, Danny DeVito feels like a guy who grew up connected, right? Like not in the mob,
He's a
not
made man.
Like no one in his family was made, but yet he knew the guy that he went to school with, that he could call his dad if he was ever in any trouble, and it would be handled quickly. That's who Danny DeVito is.
Chet, the 3 receivers at the top of this draft, I think unlike the quarterbacks, I think all 3 are going to be great. Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm most certain. It's really the only player I'm most certain about and willing to risk future picks to go up and draft. Malik Neighbors, yes. Rome Odunze, yes.
There's nothing not to like about those 3 receivers. I've yet to see
Neighbors,
every think piece has someone poking holes in players. I haven't seen anything legitimate about those 3 guys.
Malik Neighbors, an explosive play waiting to happen. Rome Odunze can run all the different routes, perfect in that. And
he's big. We interviewed him in Vegas, and he's listed at 6'3".
Yeah.
I think 215. But I feel like he was felt bigger than that when he was sitting down next to us.
He did. And then you have Marvin Harrison Jr., who's the total. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't need to work out, so he didn't. He didn't do the combine or the pro day. No need. Don't have to do anything like that. Maybe they have the confidence of Tyreek Hill.
He said, I'm good. Is what he said about pro day anywhere or combine. I'm good. I'm set. Me, Marvin Harrison Jr., ready to go.
So Tyreek Hill, he's on the $1 million worth game podcast that he mentioned and admitted that Mike McDaniel called him out after a Chiefs matchup where Tyreek Hill was quote unquote manhandling him. And here's the quote for you, L'Jarius Sneed slams Tyreek Hill in this game, in the playoff loss. The play against Sneed, the Chiefs, everybody has seen this play against the Chiefs. When this MFer slammed me to the floor, he, talking about Mike McDaniel, called me out. He's like, Reek, bro, you're supposed to be the effing best player in the effing league, and you got this guy putting hands all over you like that. We pay you all this effing money for what? And now Hill explains, for me, I love this. I'm going to take that shit to heart. I'm going to be better from it. That'll never happen again in my life. You feel me? If an MFer cannot hold me accountable, I feel like I'm not going to be able to get better. Like, obviously, the coaches can bypass that and just be like, he'll get better from it. But if he's not saying anything, like the other guys in the locker room, they're going to look at it as, if Reek can get away with it, I can get away with it. And that's not getting the team better. That from Tyreek Hill, who also went on to say that he could put up 175 yards receiving 2 touchdowns against Dion in his prime.
That is amazing. From a guy of his caliber, though, to want coaching like that, and those words also to him, what was an incredible.
How about Mike McDaniel stepping
comeback.
up in that?
And I think it's one thing to say, "Hey, I want to be coached hard." Right? This is what I want. I came here to be coached hard, and I want you to hold me accountable, and I love being coached and all that. But when push comes to shove, when you hear those words out of another man's mouth, and they're saying that to you,
and after an embarrassing moment.
At a moment where you've been beaten, and you were embarrassed, you were on the ground defeated in that moment, to still want that coaching and to still be fully okay with being told that, those are two very different things. I think it's easy to say, I want to be coached hard. I'm coachable. Treat me like you would an undrafted free agent that's probably not going to make the team, and I want to be coached that way. Another thing to remember those words said to you that Hutton just said, recount them in a podcast interview and love it. Love it and want more of it from a coach, which makes me love that.
Chad, I'm going to play this for you.
Okay.
Here's L'Jarius Sneed going at it with Tyreek Hill.
He's getting taken to the ground. Yep.
Yeah, they just get.
And now he's pumping his chest.
Yeah.
Sneed is afterward.
It was that type of game for Miami in the cold. They wanted nothing to do with the cold weather.
It's incredible.
That day in Kansas City.
Incredible.